I'm going to show you how to prepare a t-shirt to make a t-shirt quilt. So what you're going to need is an iron, an ironing board, a rotary cutting mat, a rotary cutter, a 12 by 12, technically it's 12.5 by 12.5 cutting square, interfacing. This is fusible interfacing. It's called quilter's grid interfacing, and this is a really good interfacing that will not allow stretch. And of course you're going to need a t-shirt. So the first thing I'm going to do, I mentioned that I need a 12 by 12 cutting template. The reason I use a 12 by 12 or 12.5 by 12.5 cutting template is that this one was $5 at Walmart. I've talked to a lot of people who make t-shirt quilts and they use a 15 by 15 template, but that one costs like $35 or $40 and I just haven't wanted to go out and buy one yet. So I use this 12 by 12. What I'm going to do, oh, I forgot to tell you something you're going to need. Fabric shears. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this down on my quilt or on my t-shirt and make sure that it fits. Okay, then when I know it does and I know about where I want my t-shirt design to be, I'm going to cut around that. I'm not going to be exact. I'm just going to make a big cut. I'm going to cut it down to size later. It's really important that you don't do this at the same you don't cut it down to your 12 by 12 before you get the interfacing on. This makes a huge difference in the pieces that you're going to have cut and your ability to sew them. The problem with t-shirt quilts is that a lot of times well, we all know that t-shirts stretch. That's why we love them. They're very comfortable. And t-shirts stretch. But we don't want to have that stretch in a quilt because it's going to make your quilt sag and it's not going to look very nice. When I was first asked to make a t-shirt quilt, my big concern was, well, I want it to look nice. I've seen a lot of t-shirt quilts that just look cheap and that look poorly made, and I did not want that to happen. And so I did a lot of research and I found that if you interface it, it's going to make a huge difference. So I actually went to the fabric store and asked them what kind do you think is the best interfacing for this, and they told me to get this quilter's grid kind. It's about $5 a yard. I was just at Joann's this weekend and looked, and it was about $5 a yard. It's double folded so that you get, I want to say it was about 40 inches wide. But this is fusible, so we're going to just iron it on. If you're worried about the $5 a yard for just interfacing, wait till there's a coupon at your local fabric store for 40 or 50% off of one cut of fabric or one item, and then use it to get this, and that's great. So what I'm going to do, I have this interfacing cut to, I think, about 14 by 14. Remember, my square eventually is 12.5 by 12.5, so I want it to be bigger because I'm going to end up cutting it off. So I'm going to put this face down, and I'm going to put this fusible side down. If you put it fusible side up, it'll fuse to your iron. Hopefully you know that. And then I'm just going to do my best to center it from upside down. Looks good to me. And then I'm going to iron it. When you do fusible interfacing, you have to let it sit, the iron sit for about 10 to 11 seconds. That's how you get a really good fuse. So this actually is the longest part of your process. It takes a long time to fuse something that's 14 by 14. So this is the longest part of your process. But it's really important that you get it done and get it done well. This is going to prevent your t-shirts from stretching. Okay, once you have it fused, I'm going to just kind of go over it and just make sure that it's all crisp and nice, and it should be fused together. And you can feel that it's going to be thicker, and if you try to stretch it, it's not going to stretch. And so that's what we really want. We want this to act more like a woven fabric, so it will go in our quilt much nicer. So once this is fused and once this is on, we're going to take our rotary mat. Now, I don't recommend doing a rotary mat on an ironing board, but I really don't recommend doing it on your bed or on the carpet. Neither of those places work. You need a hard surface to do it, and this ironing board is just hard enough. So take your rotary mat. This is another item that I recommend waiting till your fabric store has a coupon for 40 or 50% off, because these are expensive. They are so worth it. It is so worth it to get the Olfa brand. They're, in my opinion, the very best brand. But it's worth it. But I recommend paying 50% off. Just going to throw that out there. So once that's done, I mentioned earlier that this is 12 by 12 or 12.5 by 12.5. What I mean is, it's 12, it will end up making a finished 12-inch square. You're going to have a 1/2 inch around two sides to give you a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all edges. So if you need to center the design, center it about a 1/4 of an inch away from all of the edges if your design is big, because that's how big your squares are going to end up being, is 12. You're going to take a 1/4 inch off of all sides. And this is a great, great square. So I'm just going to make sure that it's centered. I'm going to do my very best to make sure that it's centered. And then I'm just going to take my rotary cutter, put it right up against the edge. I like to do 2 sides at a time if I can. And then I'm going to rotate the whole thing. Make sure that you've got it squared up again in the right place. To finish rotary cutting it. And there I have my 12.5 by 12.5 square, which will end up making a 12 by 12 quilt piece. You're just going to lay those out once you've got all of them done. Lay them out, sew them together, and then I recommend tying a t-shirt quilt, but that's absolutely my own personal preference. If you would like to quilt it, if you would like to machine quilt it, any of that would be fine. I like to tie them just because then I can place my ties around the edges of the squares and I don't worry about messing up my design inside. So that is how you prepare a t-shirt piece to become quilted into a t-shirt quilt.